This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, here on this June 4th, 2022. And I want to say a happy birthday to my late father, who would have been 76 today. He just passed away April 5th. But today he would have been 76. And how am I celebrating it? I'm talking to an awesome guy for the third time on my show. Folks, he got crazy at rock and roll high school, where he made everybody's heart peeps. Folks, I give you the awesome Allan Arkush. How do you do, Allan?
Hi, how are you? It's good to be back. This is the third time.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what were the dates? Do you remember of the first two?
Um, I can find out because I have the dates on the interviews.
Uh-huh.
I think the first one, if memory serves,
Just the year would be good.
2017 for the first one. And second one I think was either 2018 or 19, one or the other.
Uh-huh.
I know one was March, and one was May, and this one's June. So
Okay, so here we are 3 years later.
yeah, there we go. I think those are correct, but when I put the episodes down, I always put the number of the episode and I always put the date on it
Right.
when it was done, So yeah, absolutely. And look what I have.
You've got the Blu-ray of Get Crazy.
No, this is
All
Rock
right.
and Roll High School.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jesus, Rock and Roll High School. So that's the Blu-ray. Is that the 40th anniversary? No, that one was metal. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And
Get Crazy on Blu-ray. Thank you for having both.
now I've got to pat myself in the back a little bit because do you remember what those last two interviews had in common?
No, I don't.
Oh,
But obviously
I've
you
been
do.
looking forward to bringing this up.
Okay.
I seem to remember somebody, you saying, well, I said, when's Grit Get Crazy go come on Blu-ray? And you said both times, ain't gonna happen. Something about music rights, the transfer. Do you remember saying that?
I've not only do I remember saying that, I've been saying that for 35 years.
Now, I
Um,
want you to say, Greg, thanks for having faith. I'm putting you in my will.
wow. I got to thank you, and I got to thank a lot of other people. I mean, it's quite a serendipitous journey. And I was thinking about it yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
wondering if it turned out for the best to
I think it
have
did.
Get Crazy come
This was
out so long
beautiful.
ago. Yeah.
This
To
was
have it come out
beautiful.
so long ago because Rock and Roll High School, Get Crazy was made in '83.
Mm-hmm.
So there was not yet the context of Rock and Roll High School. Rock and Roll High School had been out for 4 years then,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like a cult movie for fans. It hadn't gotten a large distribution yet. I think it probably was out on Warner Home Video on VHS. Um, but obviously, since then, it has become part of a certain culture. It's available everywhere. People have seen it. Many, many, many people have seen it, and critics have seen it. Now, I received because Get Crazy came out was got such limited release.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't very many reviews of it, and although the reviews were positive, there was no context for my work yet because I hadn't started doing television, etc. So the fact that all these 30 years have passed and now it comes out, and if you want, we can go into detail how that happened. Uh,
Please.
that the movie has gotten such good reviews because it's being compared to Rock and Roll High School.
Oh, they play a great double bill, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and they have a continuity of style between the two of them.
Yeah.
And it's a style that I have used a little bit since then, but it's not as those two really are of a very similar style. And in context, it has gotten great reviews because number one, it's a great backstory. You know, when you watch the movie and you find out the backstory of it and how it got to be where it is, that's interesting. That's interesting to write about. The stuff in it that's sort of, as I call it, the embarrassing 80s humor at times, the porkiness of it,
Hmm.
has now become sort of idiosyncratic and you just sort of let it go because it's so distant ago, you know? And the fact that because there aren't any men, I mean, you'll tell me, but there are very few, there are no movies like it, or very few like it. And the manic nature of it, the intensity of it, the pace of it have all improved with age. And the nature of the people in it have improved with age. So it actually, in a long way, worked out for the best in terms of the reaction to it.
Hmm.
And on a personal level, the fact that we went back and we interviewed everybody and well, why don't I tell the story of it?
Go
Would you
for it.
like me to do that? Okay.
Go for it,
All
please.
right. So I had made Heart Beeps,
Hmm.
and that was out of my wheelhouse, and it reflects my status as a filmmaker then, and what I knew and what I didn't know, and the fact that I was making a studio movie, not with my peers. I had worked for Corman for 5 years.
Hmm.
So all those movies were made with people my age who had about my amount of experience and were all film students. And now I go and make a movie at a studio. And whatever I was thinking about what I was making, it was wrong. I made a lot of bad decisions or decisions that were just not what was called for, you know. And the movie came out poorly, and my directing in it is bad. In terms of, I look back now as a film professor at the American Film Institute, I can analyze it and see what I did as a young filmmaker and the mistakes I made. So then I had the opportunity. I wanted to make a rock and roll movie
Hmm.
and get back to something that I was good at. And I really wanted to make a movie about my experiences working at the Fillmore East in New York City. Okay. I did that during film school. So, and I did a student film at the Fillmore East. So this was an idea that had been cooking around in my head for a while. And I thought it'd be great to return to it. So together with one of the guys who worked there, Danny Opatashu, who was in my NYU class and was also worked at the Fillmore and had worked at Corman a little bit, and we worked, you know, we've been longtime friends. We came up with our autobiographical version of it and set in a period. And we went around and we couldn't sell it. You know, basically no one was interested in it. But we had a lot of meetings because of Rock and Roll High School. And finally, one company said that they were interested in it. And then they said, well, can you make it present day, which meant 80s? Can you drop the period stuff? When it was a period movie, it was a picaresque adventure of a young guy as a stage crew and so forth. It was very much set in that era. And although it was funny, it was still a comedy. And so then the company said, we'll do it if you make it the 80s. And Danny and I talked and we came up with it and we did the outline and then we did the script. And while we were doing, when we handed in the script, they felt that it wasn't broad enough. They wanted something wackier. These were people who were talked like, it should be more like Porky's. I mean, it more like Airplane. That's what they wanted. And so they I went back to Danny and he said, I'm really not interested in doing that. And we got two more writers and they wrote a lot of the sex humor in it and they made a lot of additions. When I look back and starting this project again, I went back and I read Danny's first scripts. That would have been a better movie overall. Um, it had a sweeter story. The Bill Graham character was Bill Graham. It was just a different movie, and so I said yes, and we made this movie set in the '80s, and we adjusted it, and we got all the bands, and we made the movie. We made it in 37 days. Um, a budget of about $8 million, and for a musical, that's amazing. And we had in order to do that, the way the money was raised by this independent company was you had someone from the money people on set all the time, making sure that I had to do a presentation of how many days and what we would shoot on each day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, having worked for Corman, this was not a big surprise to me. And I surrounded myself with a lot of my friends and people who worked on the other pictures and people who had worked at the Fillmore. And it's just packed with that. There are many, many people from my past and from the Fillmore East Stage that were working on the movie. And so we made the movie. And it was a very intense shooting schedule because if you've seen the movie, as you can imagine celebrating New Year's Eve for 37 days.
Yeah.
When you watch the movie, what's your impression of it? Is it intense or is it laid back?
Well, Malcolm McDowell talking to his penis was certainly intense.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, I love it. I gotta say, I love the covers. Who came up
Oh,
with that? Like this was very Animal House, and it
yes,
works
that was the
beautifully.
absolute idea. Yeah. And
Beautiful.
I hate that cover.
What this?
Get crazy. I absolutely hate that cover.
Why? I love it. The woman riding the
Oh,
yeah.
it was so typical of what those guys wanted. You know, a woman riding a um, Fender guitar like it's a big dick. You know,
Oh, I never thought about the big dick thing, but
well, you didn't know
may,
these guys.
yeah. Okay. I see your point, I guess.
And it has nothing to do with the movie.
No, it
Whereas
doesn't, but yeah.
if the cover had been more like the Rock and Roll High School cover, it would have represented the movie better. If
I
it had been
agree.
this, if it
Yeah.
had that density of characters and so forth, and simultaneity and energy, you would have had a better idea. But that leads me to what was typical about these people.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea what I was making. And they had a lot of business machinations that I had to ride out. That they searched for distribution and so forth, and I would get notes of different distribution people, etc. And we just made the movie and we tested it, and it didn't test particularly well because the audience didn't understand what I was trying to do. There was no context for them. They wondered how you could have a concert with so many different kinds of rock bands, which is the way concerts were before those people were going to concerts. And it doesn't have a lot of personal story to them, because it's so picaresque and there's so much going on. And there isn't a strong plot. Basically, it's a great way to have a lot of rock and roll jokes and great rock and roll concert scenes and Cheech and Chong kind of humor, etc., all that stuff. And it's very, very much like the movie that inspired it, which is called Hell's a Poppin', which is a crazy movie. And it's also like Marx Brothers movies that I like a lot. Richard Lester movies. I like layers of anarchy and making a movie at that time where there's so much going on, you don't feel like you're getting it all. Okay. And that part of making that movie um, has traveled over in the fact that I'm a much better filmmaker now. And my films have density, but they don't have that craziness, but they certainly have that pace and the amount of story and plot that goes through. So anyway, they don't like the movie, and they don't want to include it in their distribution package, and then so they make a deal, unbeknownst to me, that they will sell the movie to a tax shelter group, and who will pick up the tab, so to speak, and the distribution deal with Abco Embassy.
Mhm.
And like in the producers, when it loses money, they will take a tax loss and make money. Okay. So the tax shelter group gets stuck for the money as long as the movie loses money. So what they did was they did almost no advertising, and they only released it in for 1 week in any theater they could get, and not that many of them. So the movie dies and disappears after a week, essentially. And every once in a while, it would appear in one other city. And this was very painful to me, you know.
I bet,
Uh,
yeah.
I basically took my work and threw it in the trash heap because it's more valuable to them as trash than it was as something else. And um, that was it. And about 5 or 6 years later, so this is 83, whenever the first DVDs came in, um, the company who somebody who owned it or had some relationship to it, I don't remember who, um, wanted to put out I think it was MGM, a DVD of it, and they couldn't find the soundtrack, the sound mix.
Mhm.
And so that's when I spoke to them, and we did what we could, and they couldn't put it out because they could not find the sound. It was missing. And the elements that the picture elements were separate from the sound elements. And what I did not know at the time was the paperwork involved to make a movie was half of it was gone. Okay. So the movie is basically gone and dead, right? And um, there were prints of it. And those prints were played in theaters of Quentin Tarantino, Edgar Wright, um, oh, he does. He's in Quentin's movies. He does great horror pictures. Um,
Oh, Eli Roth?
Eli Roth. All of them were big promoters of the movie. So if they did a little festival or something, they would program it. And the Ale House movie theaters, the Draft House movie theaters, played it a lot. And but that was it. And so now I pretty much got a lot of questions. Where is it? What can we do? And nothing. And then about 5 years ago, I'm friends with someone who works for a small distribution company, and he says, "Where is Get Crazy? Why is it not coming?" I told him the whole sad story. He goes, "This is my business. Let me see what I can find." And he calls me back and says, "Guess what? MGM actually has all the elements after all. They were the ones who were looking for it, but since Blu-ray and streaming, they have taken all their vaults and organized them, and they have everything. That is, they have picture negative, they have a master, a video master, they have the sound, etc., all there." And he says, "So I'm going to see if we can buy it from MGM." And MGM says no, they don't want to sell it to them. This is not uncommon because even though companies didn't give a shit about the movie, if you ask for it, then they start thinking it must be worth something. It's that ridiculous. So that was it. And he said, "I suggest you call them up yourself. Here's the people to call and get them to see if they'll distribute it, because it's theirs." So I do that, and I get friendly with this woman, and she presents it to business affairs, and the answer comes back. She says they know they have it. They don't want to put the work into it because they don't think it's worth it. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you have a lot of music in it, and they don't want to deal with all those copyrights and everything. And they also don't have the complete paperwork. So for them, it's just a headache and they're not going to make enough money. And who cares to them? I said, oh, so she sends me a copy of the movie off the master, and of course, in the history of this movie, it's got black spaces in it and won't play. So anyway, that's it. 2 years go by and I'm doing commentaries and working a little bit as for fun with Kino Lorber. And the head of Kino Lorber calls me and says, we are pursuing the rights to put Get Crazy out on Blu-ray. Don't say anything because MGM is really, really nasty and they're very finicky. And I don't want to do anything to upset this deal. And it takes him a year. And he calls me back and says, it's set. You got it. We're going to put it out. And will you do a commentary? I said, and I say, of course I'll do a commentary track. And then I called him back. I said, are you going to do any extras? And he says, well, we can if you want to be, you want to be involved somehow. I says, I want to produce and direct them. And he goes, okay, but you have to do it for a budget. I said, what's the budget? And he says, $4,000 for all those extras that you saw. So I called up, and because I'm still friends with the editors and some of the people who worked on it, I says, how would you guys like to get the band back together? And they all laughed. I said, because Get Crazy's coming out. It is. I said, we'll do the Blu-ray extras ourselves. We'll shoot them on our iPhones. We'll do interviews on Zoom, and we'll find a couple of film students to exploit. It'll be our Roger Corman, except we're Roger. We only have 4,000, and if you have so little money, that's your excuse. So I got one of my ex-students from the AFI to be the producer, someone I thought was really good. And we start setting this up to do this. And we are given a warning by a couple of people that MGM is very difficult to deal with and that they will take whatever you have and they will censor it. And okay, so we're not doing anything bad. And we reach out to everyone who made the movie and who is in the movie. And we do really, really well. And they all say, oh, yeah. And I said, it's just a phone, it's a Zoom, won't take up any of your time. And we start, it's about more than a year ago, I start collecting all this stuff. We make all these appointments, and I had a list of questions because we wanted it to be not just about Get Crazy. We wanted it to be about people's commitments to rock and roll music in their lives. And I wanted this is my chance to say, here's what it would have been. Let's talk a little bit about the Fillmore East. This is my way of making it full circle to make myself feel better about what had gone before. And I get Eli Roth to do the commentary, along with Daniel Creamer and I, who have done a lot of commentaries. So as we start doing this, everyone is so, well, you've seen it. What's your impression of the people being interviewed?
I loved it. I watched the whole thing, and I thought the Zoom presentation was great. I got to see some names, some people I actually need to reach out to get on the show at some point too, because this film's gonna be celebrating 40 years next year. Get
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, yep. So
but how did you feel about the attitude and the chemistry of what was going on?
I loved it. I also liked the fact because obviously you weren't shooting in one place all the time. You did them different days, and I
Yeah.
like the ones like where you had the background, you had your little boom box.
Yeah.
That takes me back.
Yeah.
But you did well with your background there. And when you thought about what you wanted for a background, was that in accordance to who you were interviewing or just where you was at the time?
Okay, here's the funny part. All right.
Okay.
So now you've seen some of my trailers from hell, I'm
I
sure.
have. Yes, I have.
Okay, and they're usually shot in my office.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the idea. I would be in my office and I would do this from my office. And then sometimes we would put like a psychedelic background behind us, depending
Mm-hmm.
upon who we were talking to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, COVID comes along about a month before I'm supposed to start shooting, or 2 weeks, and I'm on vacation up in Portland. And we decide to not go back to LA because the hospitals are full, it's a mess. So now I'm actually in the place where we film this right now. And so I think, well, what am I going to do? So I start to film just the editors first, because they're close friends. And I looked at the backgrounds. I thought, I thought, how about if I use the device on the Zoom where you have the green screen? And in that room of my house with all the records and stuff, I actually have pictures of it that I took for various times. So I use those pictures like background plates in a science fiction movie. And I'm sitting in front of a very small green screen. So I am actually not in my office. I am like here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot tell because the green screen does that. And as I was doing, I said, don't limit it. Wouldn't it be great when you talk to the Fillmore people, you put the Fillmore backgrounds in there. And when you're talking to records people, you put the home mixtapes behind it when I'm talking to the music editor. And there's a record store behind me at one point, which is like called Village Oldies, which is where I used to buy all my records when I was, starting out. And I went there for 30 years. So that's in there. So that's why we changed the background. So actually, it's shot like a sci-fi movie that is with backgrounds that are green screened in. So that's how we did that. And I don't know how you noticed or not, but the chemistry between me and the people talking is really good.
I think so.
Everyone,
Yeah.
everyone is really happy to contribute to this and to get the movie out there, and has
Mm-hmm.
very, very nice memories of making the movie. I mean, they all were so enthusiastic about that time. And for something done in 37 days, 38 years ago, it is as if we just shot it. It's so vivid in their minds. And that was great. And that gave that whole um, extras a real special charm. Everyone's energy is high. And then we had 40 or 50 hours of this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I, and we had and so also in doing it, I contacted the photographer from the Film Maurice, and she gave us those photos to use. And at the Film Maurice is a very famous light show called the Joshua Light Show. And I'm still friends with Josh because I used to also do psychedelic light show with him. And Josh gave us all that great light show footage behind us. So it's behind, and also when you're interviewing Captain Cloud, you got to put some stuff behind him to make it look weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of that. So, and also we decided to use it as chapter headings and so forth. So for something done for under we came in under budget. For something done for under $4,000, it's got a great look to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it originally was almost 2.5 hours long of Blu-ray extras. Can you believe it?
Wow. Well,
And
I'm gonna.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
go
What was you
ahead.
saying?
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say one of the things I loved is the contrast of the movie because you got the this was a nice running joke. You had the blues artist who was like, that sounds like my song,
Hmm.
but it started out with the blues. And
Yes.
then it went, you had the girl band out there and they rocked it off. And forget off the top of my head the lead singer, but I really liked her.
Laurie, East Side.
Lori, that's it. Loved her in this. And then you have Malcolm McDowell come out and being the headliner. And I love the fact that apparently he couldn't sing,
Yeah,
and he was told to how did you guys put it?
just act dramatically.
Yeah, he's so good playing Reggie Wanker, you know.
Yes.
But I noticed that the hippie band didn't go out on stage. I mean, they were busy backstage.
Right.
Yep.
In the original script, they were the closing act.
Okay.
But in the rewrites, Reggie was.
Mm-hmm.
And in the original script, the character of the stage manager
Mm-hmm.
and the woman who he likes both worked there at the same time, and he could not make his move on her. He was too shy. And then when he got dosed with acid, it was his dick that talked to him and saying, "Go after her." So that was a different storyline, you know. And when we got Reggie, we made him, of course, the headliner, and we realized that we didn't need Captain Cloud to play,
Yeah, he
you
seemed
know.
happy.
Yes, and so that was another thing. And what you point out with the blues was a theme throughout the piece that I was
Yep.
trying to do,
Yep.
which was a movie that was a comedy and also consisted of rock criticism in the sense of rock history and jokes based on rock, you know. And so if you were a music fan, there is a whole other level to what's going on, which is why everybody sings the same blues song. Because and the first song the blues band sing is "The Blues Had a Baby" and they call it rock and roll. There's a whole underlying theme in there. The whole Laurie Eastside's band, the Nada band, every member of that band represents another aspect of girl groups throughout music history. From the 50s and 60s, Shirelles and Ronettes and so forth, through the Go-Go's, through the Riot Girls. They're all and hardcore. Each member is a different era. So there's that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The character of Toad, remember him? He's the drummer.
Yep.
Now, why do you think he's called Toad? You'll never guess because the first famous rock drum solo of the rock era was called Toad and was by a group called Cream.
I know. Cream. Yeah.
Yes, and that is the name of Ginger Baker's drum solo is Toad. So there's full of these coded rock references throughout the piece and jokes based on all of that. And that's just more of the density of it all. And so when we cut it together, so I take all this footage, and my friend Kent Beta, who worked on the movie and has edited all of Billy Crystal's movies, etc., and he edited Spinal Tap.
Love
Um,
it.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He started doing a structure and going over and over it. So now we had a pretty good cut of the film, and we send it into the guys who run the company that put it out, Kino Lorber, are thrilled. They don't, as long as we don't go over $4,000, they respect the artist, do what you want. They're just really thrilled that the person who made the movie is doing the extras. That's like unheard of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to get permission from MGM because of the content, and they hate it. The version that you see, they object to totally. They don't like us referring to people who had arguments on the set. There was anecdotes that they wanted us to lose. They don't want us to mention Bill Graham, who was, you know, our mentor. The discussion where we talk about the first AD carrying a starter's pistol and firing it in the air for action and firing it twice for cut.
That's not unheard of. I mean, apparently, according to rumor, William Franken did that on the set of The Exorcist.
And was a common thing on westerns, and he had come from westerns. The guy had been the AD on the Wild Bunch.
I
They
love
want
it.
us to they want us to take that out, and and they they didn't realize that it was a musical. Can you wrap your head around this?
What did they think it was?
I had sent them a letter saying, this is what I want to do. How do I deal with the music rights? I had assumed that because they distributed the movie, they had the music rights. And I've been doing this long enough to know which rights I could probably, which of the songs I could probably use and which
Hmm.
of the songs I probably couldn't. And there was three types of songs in the movie. There was a song that you would license and use under a scene, like Electric Larry. Remember him? We had this piece of music by Agent Blue, and in the men's room, there's reggae dub music. That's licensing. I didn't think we could get that. Then there was music that we licensed that we recorded ourselves, like King Blues songs and all that. I thought we had a good chance of getting that. And then there was the music that we paid for and had it recorded. And that I thought, of course, I mean, I've been doing this long enough, and that's called work for hire. They wouldn't let us have almost any of it because they didn't have the paperwork. So, and they didn't, and they said, well, we don't know who wrote any of this, et cetera, et cetera. And so it fell on me to get all these rights. And you're going to laugh at this, Gilbert. So what do? How do I find the people who wrote, because I had to get signed paper, who wrote the song that Reggie sings? Okay. I knew who wrote Get Crazy, and I knew that we would go to Sparks. But these guys, so I put on my Facebook page, Hive Mind, here's what I'm doing. Does anyone know where I can find, I write these guys' names because they wrote songs for Get Crazy and all this stuff. And so figuring it's a shot in the dark. An hour later, I get back a posting that says, I love Get Crazy. Not only can I help you find who produced it, but my dad wrote that song.
Oh, wow.
I mean, really? And I call up the record producer who I've not talked to, and he is so thrilled. And then I call up the dad, and he goes, of course, I'll let you have it, you know? So we found out who the publishing company and all, and no matter what we did, it wasn't enough for MGM, right? And so finally, we just said, okay. Basically, I wrote them a really strong letter. Let me put it that way. They were saying this is not a normal Blu-ray thing. This is not what we do. And I said, look, guys, it's my film. It's my life story. This is my thing. Who knows what you normally do? I don't care. And,
Nope.
And also we decided that since we were getting so much grief about the one that's in there, that the other ones that we had made, we were never going to present them to them because we didn't have time or money. So Kino Lorber came to the rescue, and Frank and Kino Lorber says, don't worry. I told them to back off and I will deal with it and just talk to me. And we just finished it the way we wanted to. And so there is a 45-minute section called Our Lives Were Saved by Rock and Roll. And you can watch that if you go to YouTube, to my YouTube channel, Allan Arkush. And it's on there for anyone who wants to see it. And it's been on Trailers from Hell. And it's a whole document just like this about everyone's first rock and roll concerts. And you get to read Ed Begley having dinner with John and Yoko. And I was kidding Malcolm McDowell when I said, "So Malcolm, we want to know what the first concert you ever went to was, and you're from Northern England. Did you ever see those four lads from Northern?" England? Goes, "See them? I was at the Cavern Club." "You saw the Beatles at the Cavern Club?" He says, "I saw them when they were called the Silver Beatles, which they were for 3 weeks before they were the Beatles." So it's great stuff. It's got Flo and Eddie, Captain Cloud, talking about going to Cantor's Deli with the Doors. How whenever it came time to pay the bill, Jim Morrison would be in the bathroom, so you had to pay for Jim. I mean, great rock and roll stories. And then I did something, and it was like a really dream idea. The song that the Nada Girls do, "Not Gonna Take It No More," in the movie. Great rocker. I thought, wouldn't it be great to find them and have them do it all again, like they are now? Because then they're in their 20s, maybe early 30s. Now they're in their 50s and 60s. And we found almost all of them. And we had them film themselves lip syncing along with it to, and on iPhones all around the country. And I found the drummer, and we had her set up her drums in the basement of her house and everything. And then my friend who's an editor, who edited Jumanji movies and everything else, he cut it together. And that's that Blu-ray extra in there where you get the two versions of the songs. And I'm really proud of that, because now it just goes to show that just because you're in their 50s and 60s, you can still rock.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
You like
absolutely.
that version of that song?
Yes. Oh, I loved everything about this, and here's one thing I notice about you as a filmmaker, especially with these two movies.
Okay.
You know how to deal with crowds of people.
Yeah.
Because this one here, of course, when you got the opening scene where Sheena's a punk rocker is going,
Yeah.
and you got everybody going nuts there in the opening. But you also have when PJ Souls as Riff Randall gets everybody going. You got the cheerleaders coming down the stairs and people going flying down the hallways on skateboards and stuff, and the crowd's outside. And in here, I mean, you just look on the back of these pictures. I mean, you got crowds and crowds. And let's not forget the poor guy manning the door. Well,
Well, on some days, we had 400 extras.
yeah,
And the people who were extras were out of work people who liked rock, which was mostly LA members of the punk scene. And so we needed a first AD who he controls the crowds, they control all of this stuff. And so we asked John Landis who his AD was and how good they were at Animal House, because there's the parade scene, and we needed someone who was great with crowds. And he recommended this guy, Cliff Coleman. So Cliff comes in, and Cliff looks like he's made out of an old saddle. He's real thin, and he's really ropey, muscular. And he rode up on his Triumph motorcycle. It's a good sign. And he's about in his 40s at that time, maybe. So we're talking, and this is before the internet. So, Cliff, we know you were great on that. What other movies have you done? And he says, "Have you ever seen Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch?"
oh yeah,
And I said, "You were," he says, "I was the first AD." And I look at the producer, we go, "We're hiring this guy."
yeah,
And he worked on John Ford Westerns, and we took him to see Iggy Pop. And
yep, Iggy Pop.
and as you know, Piggy is based on Iggy. And
Hmm.
Iggy was doing some stage diving. And at one point, he goes up to the balcony of the Palladium in LA and jumps off the balcony, and people catch him. And I'm looking at it, and I turn to Cliff and I say, "Can we do this?" And he goes, "Oh, we're going to do this." And
I
that's
remember.
how the idea for the scene came up. And that's why that scene with Piggy is the most intense scene in the movie. It was a real attempt to capture a style of rock and roll where you lose control.
Hmm.
To me, the great rock bands of live music, it's like, okay, when I was a teenager
Yesterday.
yesterday, I'm 74, okay? So me and my
I thought you
friends,
were 39.
yeah, I wish. Me and my friends would, I won't say steal. We borrowed the parents' cars after everyone was asleep, and we
Hmm.
go for joyrides. And we lived near the George Washington Bridge, okay,
Hmm.
in Jersey. And there was a road that went down from the bridge to the river that was all windy. And it was with no cops around, since nobody was on that road at night. It was really fun to just crank up whatever was on the radio in those days, which was stuff like Satisfaction by the Stones or a Beatles song, because this was those days, and drive down it real fast. And at a certain point, my friend would turn off the headlights. So you are basically almost out of control, and we're all screaming at the top of our lungs. That's the kind of rock concert that I like. The one where you're not sure if the band is going to survive to the end of the song. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
like when, if you saw the Clash, you felt that. If you saw the Who, you felt that. There's times Lou Reed, obviously Iggy. That's what I was trying to show in the movie. Also, I wanted to show when your life has gone through something that affects you, you can take your song and sing it in a way that's direct reaction to how you've been affected, which is why Reggie does that slow version of Hot Shot.
Love
That's all
it.
emotional, right? So
Hmm.
I was really trying to dig in to get all that in. And so that's basically the backstory of all of that, and how in the end all this stuff came out okay. So if you people want to see some really cool stuff that's not even on the Blu-ray, go to you know YouTube and dial up my YouTube channel, and it's called Our Lives Were Saved by Rock and Roll. And you'll get some great rock and roll stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned John Landis and Animal House. I mean, he also directed the Blues Brothers, which also
Yes, he
had
did.
large crowds as well,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, and I forgot to mention, speaking of crowds, the Ramones concert. Did
yeah.
you take anything from the Ramones experience and use it in your experience filming the concert scenes here?
Absolutely, absolutely. Each one has been a progression. The
Hmm.
next big progression is all that I learned doing the TV series Fame.
Loved
And
Fame. I loved the movie, and I remember growing up with the TV show, and I watched that too.
so doing Fame, I learned how to keep the story going during the songs. How the music should not stop. The story should not stop for the music. And that integrated with what I learned is why in my career, the the epitome of what I can do is the Temptations miniseries.
Hmm.
That has my best music stuff in it and my best integration of story and music in it. And because the music in it is so of such high quality, it's Motown, it really stands out. Another one that I did was I did this movie which was produced by Tina Sinatra. It was
Okay.
called Young at Heart, and we did it for CBS TV. And I got to use 14 Frank Sinatra songs in it. And you can imagine, and we didn't have to pay extra or anything because it's Tina. And they are the soundtrack, and they tell the story of the movie. And it's a very sophisticated use of what I call needle drops. Now, a needle drop is an old term where you would play a record, and
Yep.
my generation coming up is the first generation to have record players in their bedrooms. I know this sounds your own record player because records were only starting to be popular in the 50s. So we all would have these little record players for 45s with these yellow records of Disney songs and stuff, and then
Hmm.
rock and roll. So we grew up with music being integrated into our life at home in our rooms, and wherever we traveled, it was on in the car, and it was playing when we got together with our friends. So there was a soundtrack to our lives. And when Hard Day's Night came along and all these movies and these 50s movies, we got to see what it was like to tell a story with the music going. So
I
that is how it was all kind of the lessons that I learned and absorbed. Now, with Rock and Roll High School, I had done something called a movie called Hollywood Boulevard, which was my first movie,
Yep.
and we have Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen, and we do a music number in it, and I shot it in about 4 hours, and so that was another lesson of it. My student film has live rock numbers, and so the Ramones thing, how we did it was we had songs that we were going to use, and we did them to playback, like "I Want You Around." Playback is when you lip sync along with it,
Hmm. I
and
love
then
that scene. I love
th-
that scene. Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
That's it. Yeah, and so, but for the live stuff, we wanted it to sound live. We wanted it to be in the moment. So we would do two takes that we recorded each
Hmm.
of the songs. Then we'd pick the version that we liked the best, and we'd use that as playback to get all our tight coverage and so forth. And that's how that was put together. And because I had a limited amount of time and stuff, there is not a lot of camera movement in it. And because we had such heavy crowd scenes in Get Crazy, the camera positions are excellent, but there are only certain shots within the shot list where I had designed specific camera moves to, because I didn't have the resources to always have the camera on a crane, or shoot for the amount of time that it takes to do like the Temptations, which is a lot of camera movement. But I got the pieces that I wanted, that because I wanted to show the music about how it's made, what goes on in a band. And if you look at like The Last Waltz, or the Woodstock movie,
Yep.
or certainly Stop Making Sense. These are all movies that transcend merely recording a band, where the camera's placed and your ability to see what goes on between the two with the musicians and how they play off each other. That was the goal, and it took me a long time or a situation where that would work. And there's like when Piggy comes out on the stage and the first thing he does is dive into the audience. That
Yeah.
was a case where I put the camera right where I wanted him to dive, and he dives right over the camera. And
I love how he signs the contract too.
yeah, with his head. That was Lee's idea. That was Lee's idea.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. No, no, I had a lot of fun. I sat down and I watched this. I love commentary tracks, the best of extras
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I love it when there's commentary tracks. Um, and I noticed you had, your Mary Warren of and Paul Bartel in this,
Yeah.
Yeah, always nice to
And
see
Mary's
them.
playing a real person. She's playing the lighting designer from the film Maurice, who is in the movie herself in one shot with me. And she did all the lighting for the rock concerts in between her touring with the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, but why weren't you there making sure the mice had earphones?
I know, I know.
Was it there? There was no mice in this concert.
No, there are no mice, but there are walking and talking joints,
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that.
right?
And I love it after the credits, you see the Joey was running through the thing. I'm on fire.
And you had seeing eye dogs that made it to the concert, and because they were there with the bluesmen, and you got we had our share of wacky things.
Oh, I love that. Where did
And the dogs chasing him at the end, you know. So,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I love PJ Souls in this movie, you know. I've never had the pleasure of having her on here yet. She's one of my bucket lists, but I've had Day Young on here, and I've had Alex Elise, and and I've had Dick Miller on here as well.
oh, great.
Yeah,
Well,
I.
here's the thing about PJ and Rock and Roll High School.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that movie has been popular and beloved for 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to say to yourself, why? Why does this movie have such a high entertainment level and people can return to it over and over again? And obviously, the story is a no, it's a tried and true high school story. The repression of rock music, or the repression of, or in a way, you could make it today in Texas and Florida with the way that they are trying to get rid of books,
Oh.
and things on African American history. You could make a rock and roll high school about that. That's one level. Obviously, the Ramones. You know,
Love the Ramones.
I can't say that I thought the Ramones would be forever, but they are. And the Ramones at the time were an edgy, little known punk band, right? But they sound like the Beach Boys or a girl group being backed up by chainsaws. All right. And that sound to these days sounds completely pop, right? But the secret to it is the character of Riff Randall and PJ Souls. That is between the Ramones and that, in the context of we're not going to let you boss us around story. That's what makes the movie have legs. And PJ stands for, and Riff, every young woman who wants to have agency over their lives. And the reason I know this is because every time I go to a concert, especially the outdoor ones, the majority of the people who are there are young women. And they are there with friends who have seen the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and one or two friends who haven't. And they keep telling, oh, watch this, watch this. So there's that enthusiasm for it. And the fact that PJ in it, that character, will not take no for an answer, demands respect and demands to do things her way.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives license over and over. I've been told by people who realized that I directed the movie what it meant to them to see someone like that in a movie. And there are very, very few movies that trace that arc of a young woman demanding and getting what she wants and doing the things on her own terms and not because a male allows her to.
Mm-hmm.
There is no sexual relationship in that movie between PJ and the Ramones. She earns it. They like her songs.
There wasn't even sexual relations between her and Vincent Van Patten, but he did buy that van and say it would cost 15 billion lawns to mow or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and now it was the idea is to draw the parallel between when a young girl has a crush on a football player, someone of status, and when a young girl has a crush or believes in an artist,
Mm-hmm.
and how the music that you listen to defines, and the friends who listen to it with you defines your place in the world in high school.
Hmm.
So that's why I think the movie is still popular. It's stupid funny.
I
Um,
love it.
you
I
know, when
think it's
you
clever funny.
okay, it's
I
fine.
think it is so clever. Some of the lines,
Yes,
that I could go on and on of the dialogue. I mean, even with the screenwriter there that ends up stuck behind glass, or
yeah.
freshman helper, like,
Oh,
or
there's tons of jokes, and one of the things that I like about it is that we keep doing a term that's called callbacks. That
hmm
is, you set up a joke and you bring it back and you bring it back again, and you know, that the mouse, you know, it's the same costume as his mother. Yeah,
yep,
and that is not enough for us. She's wearing an apron, and it
yep.
says, "I hate mousework." I mean, we are just
I love
we're
it.
like comedic doodlers. Every bit of the frame, if there's room for a joke, we write it in.
Yep, and like even the back and forth between Vincent Van Patten and Clint Howard, like every night I dream about no, she's Riff's the only girl I ever dream about, but I keep waking up just before the good part,
Right.
like
That was the first scene that was written.
I love that. Like there was some thought. Like I wouldn't call it stupid funny, because
Okay.
stupid funny. Well, let's go back to a film you hate that you made, Caddyshack 2.
Yeah.
Stupid funny, you
Stupid
know?
funny, and it has no Caddyshack
Nope.
and only one caddy. It was just a bad concept.
Yep. Yeah. But
But you learn. Yeah.
Rock and Roll High School, like going all through it, there's great lines everywhere. And I remember some, like even Lynn Farrell as Angel Dust. I
Yeah.
remember, I loved her. And even with Mary Warnov, she's playing the villain of the film, but you love her. You can't help but love Miss Togar. And
Somebody asked Mary what gave her the inspiration for Miss Togar, because
yeah,
Mary's nothing like that. She said,
no,
"Oh, once I looked at myself in the mirror with that hairdo, I said, that's Miss Togar."
yep. And
Hair and makeup made that, and she just went with it.
you got some people gone. I mean, we're down, I think, to one Ramon.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I was lucky enough to have Dick Miller on my show
No, Dick was
five
great.
months before he passed.
Oh,
Yep,
and
5 months. And we talked about Rock and Roll High School and Gremlins. I asked him if he had a bathroom buddy for
uh-huh.
Gremlins. Yeah, he got a good chuckle out of that. Yeah, I had Dick Miller on, and another guy that's passed that I think had so many great lines was Don Steele.
Yes. Well, Don, we met on Grand Theft Auto,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we met him before that because he was a very popular DJ in Los Angeles. We used his voice on the trailers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Hang on one second.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, what else would you like to ask me?
Well, I gotta talk. Okay, let's go back to. Actually,
Get
I have
crazy.
one more thing about rock and roll. Did you ever take a look? I've had Day Young on the show. Did you ever see her sculpturing?
Yes.
Holy cow,
Yes.
she's impressive.
She's an incredible sculptor. She really is. She's a real Those are major pieces of work, and I've seen them in person, and I've seen them, I've seen her acting recently, and so forth. She is a really talented, substantial artist. You know.
You know my story about her. She did not know that this movie had a soundtrack. I sent her the soundtrack. I ordered the CD because I've got one myself, and I
You have a
sent.
CD of it, a Rock and Roll High School soundtrack?
I do. It's packed in the box over there because this is supposed to be
How
a
did you
temp.
get it?
Actually, I got it at the record store.
Oh, okay, so I guess I didn't know that because I only have it on vinyl. Maybe I have it somewhere.
I've got the CD. I know if
Yeah.
I look in that box over there, I can probably find it. But yeah, I've got it on CD,
Wow.
and I ordered one. I sent one to Day Young, and she said she listens to it while she sculpts. And I gotta say, I loved PJ Soul's version of Rock and Roll High School more than the Ramones.
Okay. Well, you know the story behind that, don't you?
No, I don't.
Okay. So Ed Stasium, who produced the record, was
Mm-hmm.
going to produce two songs in Los Angeles for the record. One was going to be "I Want You Around,"
Uh-huh.
which I heard as a demo, and I think I may have heard a demo for Rock and Roll High School. And so he recorded "I Want You Around" with Joey and the band, and then we came to the studio while they were doing Rock and Roll High School because I had seen the words and I'd asked Joey to make a little line change in some of the words, which he did, which was very nice of him. Wanted something just a little bit more about the school. And then PJ goes to sing, and she can't sing it in the key that it's recorded in. We thought we'd use the same tracks because it's a Corman movie. And she can't. And so they want to change the key and they don't want to speed it up or slow it down because that would sound weird. So the band tries to, lay it down and they really can't transpose it. So Ed sends them out to lunch and they go to their favorite place, Los Tacos. And Ed records, keeps the drums, re-records the bass and the guitars in the key that works for PJ in an hour.
Wow.
And then PJ sings along in that key, and then he augmented it after that. Isn't that funny? So it's not actually the Ramones on it. I mean, it is and it isn't.
Well, I gotta admit, like the gusto she puts behind it.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
she really brought. Yeah, I got the CD over there. It's
I
in the
must have the
box,
CD at home.
but
I must.
I sent it to Day Young, and she sent me an autographed picture, one of her, a headshot of herself, and one of her and PJ in the crowd scene from Rock and Roll High School. She said that her manager suggested that one in case I meet PJ and she could sign it as well.
Wow.
But I remember she sent me a message saying, Greg, I'm so sorry. My car broke down, had to be taken to the shop, and your picture was in the trunk. I said it'll be late getting to you. And
Uh-huh.
I said, it'll come when it gets here,
Yeah,
But
she's such a nice person.
I
Yeah.
love Day Young. Talk about Malcolm McDowell in this. Like I know him so well from A Clockwork Orange,
Obviously, yeah. Yeah.
but oh man, him as Reggie Wanker, to me, in my opinion, is the scene stealing performance in the
Oh,
movie.
absolutely. Every time he's on the screen, he commands the screen. And he knows how to pitch the comedy. So it could, as crazy as the stuff is going around him,
Mm-hmm.
he gets the right comic level to it. And his ridiculous situation of Harry's been a lot of women all over him, and then he's upset that his girlfriend is with one person. And he plays the tragedy of it with such conviction, and it works so well. and he really, really enjoyed singing the songs, and you could tell on the stage he enjoyed that, and he enjoyed because he knew some knows some of those people just being the rock star,
Hmm.
and he just brings a lot to the movie, and we loved working with him.
Yeah, and I loved hearing him on the interview, Zoom interview, on the Blu-ray, talking about his reaction to the when he's high and he thinks his
Yes,
penis is talking. I get such a kick out of that scene.
I know, isn't it? But also his story is hilarious about not reading the full script, Uh, so he
Yeah,
was
that
great to work with him, and I've worked with him several times since, and it's always a pleasure. He's a terrific man.
yeah,
And I've seen his one man play, etc. And you know, I
yeah,
highly recommend it.
yes.
And if you want to really dig deeper into Malcolm,
Uh-huh.
um, there is two movies. This first movie that he ever made is called IF
Hmm.
dot dot dot. And that is the movie. In some ways, it was an inspiration for Rock and Roll High School. And it's
Oh,
about, yes, it's about a British boarding school, and you really should see it.
okay.
Um, and a movie he did that's a musical called Oh Lucky Man that he wrote the original story of.
I've heard
And
of this and but I haven't seen it, but I have heard of it.
you can get it through, you can screen it through Amazon Prime and all that stuff. And what it is, it's a meta musical. It starts off with a band singing the song "Oh Lucky Man," and the actors in the movie are all sitting in the studio. Then it tells the story of Malcolm McDowell's search for a job, like in his real life. And then he's hitchhiking, gets picked up in a van by the band that was in the first scene and has scored the movie. And then at the end, they make a movie together. And it's very meta. Um, and the music is outstanding. The music is by the keyboard player who used to be in the Animals, the
Oh, I
British group.
remember that.
Yeah,
Yep, I remember
Alan
the
Price.
animals.
But and it's by the director of If, and it's just one of the most interesting and unique music movies and autobiographies, and I highly recommend "Oh Lucky Man."
Yeah, I loved him, and especially the facial
Yeah,
expressions that he makes.
and so he was in Heroes, and that we worked together in Heroes, and we did a legal show together, and it's just great. I love Malcolm.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially him with the lobster as well.
Yes, is this
Talk
all you got?
talk about Lori.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was Let me see. Okay, so it was always written in as a part, and we went after many, many different female rock singers,
Hmm.
and we couldn't get any of them who would be interested in doing the movie. And we were at a wit's end with all this. And we were at the same time we were looking for someone to choreograph that band, that women's band, and we
Hmm.
were still reading. We got all the band before we got Lori, and they are all real players. They were in bands in L.A.
Hmm.
I didn't want people pretending that they could play, and so I'm looking at a choreography tape by Lori, and she's singing, and I thought she could do this. So I call her up, and that's how it happened. And her story of it in the movie and on the tape is true. And she came out and jumped right in and did it. And there's so anyway, that's how it worked out. And she and I have been friends ever since. And it just was great chemistry together, between me and her. And she really understood what I was going after and threw herself into it. And, the phone rang and somebody says, "You want to be in a movie?" Oh,
Yeah. She's somebody else I gotta at some point get on the show here if she's
yeah.
interested. But I
No,
loved
you
her in
definitely
this
should. And
Yeah.
because she also has choreographed a lot of rock videos,
Mm-hmm.
and she's been a trainer for various rock stars, and just so she's just a casting director. She's a really interesting person.
Yeah. Loved her in this. Um, and of course, leaving.
Yes. Well, Lee is who he is. You know.
He could be trained. Those women had him trained. They had him in the
Yes.
trunk.
And Lee was so thrilled to do this, and I cast him right away, and he and I just understood that this was a chance for take. We both, like I said, the kind of rock music that's dangerous. That's what we wanted to show, and that's what he did, and that's what he understood about the movie, and it's all there. So that was relatively easy.
And Ed
So
Begley,
what
huh?
I think I need to wrap this up. So
Well, I was
what else
gonna
would you like to
say
know?
Ed Begley was really great in this as well. You know.
Yes, and I've worked with Ed many times since on the series Saint Elsewhere and the series Parenthood. And that whole idea of that kind of syncopated humor where they're all
Yep.
comes from, that was all in the original script.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from, do you know who Danny Kaye is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well,
Yep.
Danny Kaye's movies like Court Jester and
Mm-hmm.
so forth have that same kind of humor. There's a lot of callbacks to classic comedies and stuff. And most of that, almost, I would say all of that, was put in by the original writer, Danny Opatashu. As Danny and I make a joke out of saying, we started out to do a Lubitsch movie and we ended up with Porky's. But anyway, it's much, much better than Porky's. And, you know,
I think so.
uh,
I got two more questions for you.
okay.
One, was there any thought of bringing PJ Souls in to get crazy?
No,
No?
no, I didn't have applied for her.
Because
And
it looks like a Riff Randall kind of atmosphere.
well, I think that has more to do with my style. And
Mhm.
like I said, it's one of the advantages of having this 30-year perspective on it and the movie
Yep.
coming out, where you can look at them both and see what they have in common and what they don't, you know, and which is really nice, which would not have happened if it had come out at the same time, you know.
Hmm. Now, the other thing, Hollywood Boulevard, I want to get that on Blu-ray. Um, any, I wanted to get your thoughts on Candy, who Ralston, who unfortunately is
Candy
gone.
Wilson, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Candace had been in a couple of Corman movies, and so we were going to pretty much stick with an actress who had been in the Three Girl movies, which
Hmm.
was a genre that Roger made at the time.
Hmm.
And Candace had been really funny in Candy Striped Nurses and in Summer School Teachers.
Hmm.
So we thought that she was a natural. There was one or two other people we considered, but we went with Candace because of that and because of her charm and her sort of Lucille Ball kind of quality to her, you know. And she was able to carry both of those other movies. And in a way, Hollywood Boulevard is more her movie than it is a Three Girl movie. The other two, you know, it's really her movie and Mary's movie. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I got to get the Blu-ray of that. I want to get it.
It's
And
pretty hard to find, you know, and they only made a very limited number. You might have to go to eBay or something like that to get it, you know.
yeah, yeah, because I've been searching for that. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It
Well,
might be really expensive somewhere else,
oh,
but
well, I love what you did with it. And yeah, I loved having you on here today and talk about these, and
right. And
have,
let me throw out a couple of titles for your audience if they want to see other stuff that I've done. Okay.
sure.
I would say that you should rent or stream Heroes because I
Okay.
produced and directed that series, and there's some great stuff in there. And if you go to Netflix and a show called uh, Lemony Snicket, a series of unfortunate events, I did that show and I got a Directors Guild nomination for that. And
Okay.
it's in season 2 and the episode is called Hostile Hospital. It's episode 7 and 8, and it has a It is the return of me to that kind of broad comedy, and it's some of the best directing I've ever done. So I recommend that one as well. As well, obviously Ally McBeal and Moonlighting and all the other shows that I've done. But those are the ones. And go to my IMDb page and see all my Emmy nominations and watch those. But I do recommend in the recent years that you take a look at a series of unfortunate events. And right now, I'm a teacher. I teach film at the American Film Institute. So,
Yep, absolutely. You want to plug your YouTube channel and your any web pages and stuff on here?
you can find me on Facebook, and the YouTube channel is on. I guess how you find it is dial in Allan Arkush on YouTube, and you'll come to it. And I think it's called Boomerama, and there is all the. I'm still building it. It's got all the monologues that I've done about music, and it's got the Get Crazy stuff on it, and it has a bunch of intros that I'm putting up this weekend, I hope, from people will call me up and ask me to introduce Rock and Roll High School. So I've made a bunch of intros and tributes to Joey and tributes to Johnny. So they'll all be on that page too. So
Absolutely. Well, before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
sure.
Yeah, just state your name and that you're the director of these films, and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Okay. You are listening to Python's Paradise. How do I know? I'm Allan Arkush, the director of Get Crazy at Rock and Roll High School. So I know everything. Hi, Greg. Okay, I'll do another one. This is Allan Arkush, the director of Get Crazy and Rock and Roll High School. Rock, 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 rock and roll high school. Listen to, okay, let me try it again. Rock, 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 rock and roll high school. Does that sound familiar? I made that movie. I'm Allan Arkush. I made that movie and Get Crazy, and I always listen to Python's Paradise with Greg Gilbert. Greg Gilbert.
And I want to hear you say it one more time. Greg, you were right all along about Get Crazy going to Blu-ray. You were right
Okay.
twice before.
This is Greg Gilbert's This is Allan Arkush on Greg Gilbert's. This is Allan Arkush on Greg Gilbert's Python Paradise. The man is always right. Greg was right about Get Crazy going to Blu-ray, and pretty much you can set the clock by him every day. Send him your tax returns and stuff. He'll get it all worked out. He's always right.
Don't send me your tax returns. In school, I put 1 and 1 together and got 11. You're in big trouble. You send that to me. Allan, thank you so much for making
welcome,
these
Greg.
movies. And you
I'll
know
see
what?
you in 3 years. I'll see you in 3 years.
Hey, you never know. This movie celebrates 40 next year.
Okay, we'll do it next year. Bye, Greg.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.